Good evening, YouTube. You guys are now watching another segment of the Cali Effect. Today we are going to be going over the Deskbot deck profile. Now, for the people that are not believers of this deck, I have a quietly lovely game below. It is in the description that you guys could watch of me playing Deskbot, and I personally feel that a more controlled style variant is the best way to go when you play Deskbots. Granted, the OTK is, you could play that, but my opinion on the OTK deck is if the OTK deck was consistent, then Deskbots would probably be going somewhere other than under somebody's drawer or, you know, in somebody's trash can. With that being said, I feel that, you know, Vulcus cards, Burning Abyss, Graph, and Seer cards, and there's just too many applications just to focus on just the OTK, especially when this deck generates so much advantage that you can abuse every aspect of this deck and then still being able to OTK your opponent if they give you the opening. But there's like I said, there's quite a few other cards that you're playing. There's some interesting text that I decided to play, and there are cards that I decided not to play that I probably haven't even mentioned, but that's because I'm very new to the strategy. I hate doing deck profiles when I'm new to the strategy, but I still feel like this is a very solid Deskbot build and that there really aren't too many builds that are better from what I've seen. Let's get down to the deck profile though. So we're going to go with 3 copies of 5. This is actually an amazing card. I wasn't expecting that card to be that good, but 3 copies of 4, 3 of 3, 3 copies of 2, and 1 copy of 1. I'll discuss that card later. And then you play the Machinas, and as for the Machinas, 2 Fortress, 1 Megaform, and 2 Gear Frame. That sums up to monsters at about 18. As for spells, 3 Machine Duplication, a very live card, and I'll definitely try to discuss that within when I'm done. 3 Mystical Space Typhoons, that's also discussable. 2 Dark Hole, 1 Raigeki, and 1 Limit Removal. That sums up the spells at about 10. As for traps, I believe we run 12, which is 3 copies of Fiendish Chain, 2 copies of Mirror Force, 2 copies of Raigeki Break, 2 copies of Trap Stun, 2 Mind Crush, and 1 Solemn Warning. Now, immediately what you guys look at is you're like, whoa, Cali Effect. You're running quite a few traps for this to be a quote-unquote OTK deck. And the reason why I am is because this deck has that much room. Not only is the deck heavily searchable, like, it's not even funny on how much searchability you can do with this deck. And as you guys have seen, any deck that searches out the wazoo like this deck does could play complementary back row. Now, there's only one exception, which is Necros. And Necros, obviously, as you guys can see, their hand traps are pretty much their back row. They really don't need anything. They make boards where your opponent can't get over. That's something that this deck can't necessarily do. And it doesn't gain advantage like Necros, but it does gain a lot of searching, and it does gain a lot of pluses, and it can put game on the board, unlike a lot of other decks when you can. So when we're playing this type of back row, we want to prevent the opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! And we also want to fulfill the needs of the OTK part of the deck. So I feel like running both sides is like the best way to do it. If you're focusing just on the OTK, then you're doing something wrong, because when you don't pull off the OTK, then you know you're you're in something. You're not really going to be successful at your games. So 3 Fiendish Chain to negate my opponent's effect. Keep in mind that Fiendish Chain also prevents my opponent from attacking. So I felt that that was good because Breakthrough Skill does have a lot of better applications, and more often than not, I do pick Breakthrough Skill over Fiendish Chain. And my main reason would be like, you know, cards like Winda. You know, if you ever go against an artifact player, it's just like so many applications with Breakthrough Skill would be better. And also Breakthrough Skill isn't typhoonable if you activate it. Like, for example, if I activate Fiendish Chain targeting a monster, my opponent can chain Mystical Space Typhoon to the Fiendish Chain, and you know that won't happen. But as Breakthrough Skill, your opponent would need something like a Forbidden Lance. Mirror Forces are obviously Mirror Force. It's a slow trap, but it's one of the best battle traps, if not the best battle trap of all time. Being able to destroy your opponent's monsters. I actually did think about running the other Mirror Force, but where's my other Mirror Forces? I forget its name, so give me a second so I can find it. I actually did think about running Shining Mirror Force. I think this Storming Mirror Force. I actually thought about running Storming Mirror Force as opposed to Mirror Force, but if you ask me, I don't like it because the Mirror Force is bad against Pendulum decks, and Storming Mirror Force does nothing against pendulum decks, and it helps the blue deck. So anything to help the blue deck is probably a no-show in your deck. So that's why I was like, no on the Storming Mirror Forces. But hey, if you guys feel like there's an abundance of Exceed heavy decks, then I mean, you know, be my guest. Raigeki Break, this deck gains so much advantage that, you know, pitching some of your Deskbot monsters to the graveyard might actually be beneficial. Like pitching Deskbot 1 to the graveyard because its effect to recurse itself will be beneficial. Pissing your Deskbot 2 because it's almost useless in your hand unless you have Machine Dupe is beneficial. And like I said, this deck gains so much advantage, you won't even really notice it. Destroying back row is key for this deck. So 2 Trap Stun, 2 Raigeki Break, and 3 Mystical Space Typhoon. That's the reason why I run so much heavy destruction, is because while this deck can't always OTK, more often than not you can swing for a ton amount of damage, and it's not even funny. Like you can swing for 55 in one turn and then swing for, you know, the rest of it on the next turn. And while you didn't OTK your opponent, you did exactly what Despots do. You prevented your opponent from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You got over their scales or back row, and also you swung for all those amounts of damage. Now, if you were playing an OTK-centric and you didn't OTK them, you have nothing else to protect yourself. They're more often than not just going to wreck your board and then keep on going. The 2 copies of Mind Crush, I've noticed that this deck always has at least 1 card in hand, so Mind Crush is always alive, and that's why I wanted to play it. It's also good against, you know, basically all of the meta right now, and the Solemn Warning for Denko Sekka, and everything else in between. Now, my logic behind the Raigeki and the 2 Dark Hole is because, for the exception of Burning Abyss, unless they have that unsurmountable field of Graph and Scarm on field, I don't give a living flying F word about what my opponent has on board, and if they get destroyed, it doesn't matter, you know, they'll get advantage. I don't care about any of the Shadows for the exception of Falco, which Falco I really don't care about either. I'm going to give them that advantage because more often than not, I'm going to be swinging for game when I'm Dark Holing and Raigeking them in set hypothetical situation. So it doesn't matter, as long as they're not summoning monsters on the field, go ahead and Raigeki and Dark Hole them, and then summon all those monsters that you have in your field and be like, okay, do you have a response? If not, it's game. So it really didn't matter right there. And I already explained the 3 Mystical Space Typhoon. With the 3 Machine Dupe, I felt that this was it was interesting because Machine Dupe is very good for Despot 2. It's okay for Despot 3. I'd rather have them in hand so I can special summon Despot 2 and gain its effect. And it gets you a rank 4 and a rank 5 respectively with Despot 4 and 5. But ultimately, I personally felt that you didn't have to play 3 if you wanted to go like complete control. I mean, this deck can't OTK, so why play complete control? But I wouldn't play 3 because mainly you want to use your Machine Dupe on Despot 2, get all that advantage and just wreck your opponent. But hey, that's here nor there. There's some pretty cool combos with Despot 2 or Despot 3 and Despot 4 with Machine Dupe as well as Despot 5. There's quite a few cards that, you know, like I said, I'm only playing one Despot 1. I've never, ever used this effect to special summon itself. It requires you to have Despot 1 in graveyard and Machine Dupe in hand, and then use the Machine Dupe and special summon the Despot 1. I mean, it just was too much. So I was like, why am I running multiple copies of Despot 1 if its effect isn't the best effect in the world? Now, don't get me wrong, it's not a bad effect. It becomes 2,500 with a field full of monsters, so that's pretty good. And that it is a tuner. It does allow you to make Beast and Barkion. So I definitely decided to run 1, but it recurses itself if you do get off its effect. So I felt that there was never a need more than 1. You could also run Upstarts. Now, the only reason why I opted not to run Upstarts is because it gives your opponent 1,000 life points. And what people fail to realize is that whether you're giving your opponent 3,000 or 1,000, you probably could be playing A, better cards, and B, you can also miss OTKing your opponent because of Upstart. I've never been a huge fan of Upstart, but I mean, I play it in decks where it's mandatory, obviously. You could play Transmodify. I mean, you could make, if you're running more copies of Despot 1, you can make Despot 1 into a 2, and you can make 2 into a 3, and then 3 into a 4, and 4 into, like, that's all cute and everything. So, like, I mean, I just thought I should put that out there. And it also couples well with Infernal Reckless Summon. So, those 2 cards are, like, they work pretty much well in tandem. Or, like, you summon Despot 1, you Transmodify it, special summon Despot 2, and then chain Infernal Reckless Summon. And then you have a pretty decent combo there. So, I thought I'd really, you know, that's something worth mentioning. And there's quite a few other cards that I have missed with this, but like I said, I've probably played this deck for about a week, played it against some pretty good decks, and I figured this would be the best build that I could come up with. There definitely could be tweaks and edits to almost any build that you could make, but like I said, I felt that this was really good. As for traps, Phoenix Wing Blast and Karma Cuts for obvious, you know, takeouts for Raigeki Break. And if your local isn't infested with rogue stuff, you can take out the trap stuns and wiretaps. You can actually take out the trap stuns and just take them off for anything if you're not, you know, completely roach infested with a whole bunch of meta. But that's pretty much it for, not a meta, back row. That's pretty much it for the main deck. I'm going to get you guys into the extra deck. Alright guys, the extra deck is pretty straightforward. You can make just about, actually you can make every single one of these monsters. That's why it's called an extra deck. And sometimes, you know, you'll find yourself in a pivotal part of the game where you will make these monsters. I really didn't make, you know, most of them like all the time, so it's like whatever. But hey, it is what it is. You get what you give. On to the extra deck. One copy of Big Eye. I've never made it. You can make it with 2 Machina Fortresses, so it's there. Gaia the Thunder Charger, same reason. You can make it with 2 Machina Fortresses, but most importantly, you can make that rank 5, and then once you use that rank 5 effect, you're going to want to go into 7. I thought that was pretty good. Volcasaurus, you can make it with the 2 5s, and the 2 5s are not that hard to get out, especially when you're running Deskbot 4. 1 Castel, 1 Exciton, 1 Geargagan. I've never went into Geargagan a day in my life. I went to Castel and Exciton quite a few times. I'd probably actually, you could drop the Geargagan for the Dagusta Emerald. Just because this deck searches so well, I'd probably rather have Recursion. Oh, and there was also another card, another trap, Jar of Avarice, that you could run in the main deck. That, you know, that's pretty nifty. 1 Wind-Up Zinmanes, 1 Sky Cavalry Centauria. I felt that was the best level 3 and the best level 2 to play. Trish, there was quite a few times where I could have Trished somebody, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not liking Trish because every time you can't Trish somebody, it seems like you're just better plays out there. 1 Stardust, 1 Black Rose. It has to be the Erica Shoulder. To be honest, you don't have to play Stardust Spark Dragon. Only reason why I played it is because Machina Gear Frame's a level 7, and I needed a level 8, and I still to this second cannot figure out what is the best generic level 8. I mean, it's between Stardust, Crimson Blader, and a couple other bad cards. They're all not relevant for this meta. Goyo Guardian, Notoria Barkion, Notoria Beast, and Armadas. And that's pretty much going to sum up the main board. Now I can get you guys on to the combos. Alright guys, now on to combos. Now there isn't really... the combos are pretty much straightforward, like I'm saying. There's not really much to learn. It's just a couple of fancy things that you can do to, you know, to pump up your field and just, you know, get a whole bunch of monsters on the field and possibly just hit for game just off of that. And this is a 2-card combo. It requires Deskbot 3 and Machine Duplication. So what you're going to do is you're going to normal summon Deskbot 3, and then you're going to special summon Deskbot 2 to your side of the field from Deskbot 3's effect. Deskbot 2's effect is going to add you another Deskbot 3. You want to always make sure you add this one first before you continue to go into your combo. Next, you're going to activate Machine Duplication. Sorry, this is going to be an attack. You're going to activate Machine Duplication, and what Machine Duplication is going to do is going to special summon 2 more Despots to your side of the field. So we're going to get 2 more Despot 2s. And then those guys' effects are going to activate. What we're going to do with that, we're going to get Deskbot 4 and Deskbot 5, obviously, so we can have a little bit of variety. But what a lot of people fail to not realize is that you can activate that Deskbot 5, and Deskbot 3 will give attack to your monsters because it is another Deskbot card that you control on your side of the field. So if my math is correct, I'm pretty sure... blah, blah, blah. All machine monsters you control gain 500 except for this card. So these 2 guys gain 1,000, so they're 1,500 each. And then this guy, he gains... a pretty good amount off the bat, so he's automatically 2,000. Plus, he can give an additional 2,500 to any of your Despot monsters on the field. If you pair that up with a Raigeki or a Dark Hole before you go off, then your opponent probably isn't going to survive the rest of that game. That's just a pretty crucial combo. The next combo we're going to be talking about is Despot 3 and Despot 4. Now, these are 2 pretty easy. It's a pretty easy combo. It also requires you to have at least 1 Despot monster in your graveyard. We're going to say Despot. Or I'm sorry, we're going to say Despot 4 is in our graveyard. So we're going to normal summon Despot 3. And with Despot 3's effect, it's going to special summon Despot 4. So our opponent's going to have a monster that we're obviously going to get rid of. So we're going to attack over it with Despot 4, activating its effect, sending Despot 5 to our graveyard. Sorry, this is our graveyard. Despot 4's effect is going to activate. And special summon both Despots. And Despot 5 is going to destroy an opponent's spell or trap card. Now, in our main phase 2, we can then make a rank 4 play. You can make Geargagan X to add another Despot 3 to your hand, and then repeat the combo. If you have multiple Despots or monsters in your graveyard that you want to add back into your deck, you can make Daigusto Emerald, you can make Castel, you can really make whatever you want. But I would prefer the Geargagan X to add the Despot 3 back to our hand to start off another given set combo. And then obviously there's just the regular Deskbot 4 combo. It requires, let's say we have Deskbot 2 in the graveyard and Deskbot 4 on the field. We're going to attack with the Deskbot 4. More often than not, you're going to send Deskbot 5 to your graveyard. You're going to special summon both of these guys. He's going to destroy and he's going to add. They do not miss timing. Deskbot 3. And if you're summoning Deskbot 3, saying that you haven't summoned Deskbot 4 before, you can either special summon, is it a level 4 or lower? Nope, you can special summon the level 5 Deskbot in an XC. You can special summon the level 4 Deskbot in an XC, and you special summon the level 2 Deskbot in an XC. And then, or you can even special summon Deskbot 1 and synchro summon into, you know, Beast or Barkion. It's not really, your options for that is pretty limitless, and it all started off with a Deskbot 4. Whether it was special or well, it was summoned on that turn or not, it gives you even more options. There's really not much else to say about that. Well, thank you guys so much for watching another segment of the Cali Effect. There's probably some, I'm pretty sure there are combos and Deskbots that I've missed. And then because I don't play every single OTK-centric type card, there are a lot of cards you could play in the, there are a lot of combos that could be used in the OTK-centric build. But like I said, this is a control build. This is what I feel is the better build. Thank you guys so much for watching another segment. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy.